The Ten of Cups is actually quite a strange card. It's known as satiety, of which is the state of fullness. For example, you've eaten a large meal and you don't feel hungry for ages afterwards. You could be saying that you are feeling a sensation of satiety. It's a strange card because there is quite a difference in interpretation here from what we may see on the Rider-Waite deck, of which seems to show a glorious rainbow world of colour and dancing and beauty. Some have suggested that the differing colours here and this matte yellow floor could represent that this card actually takes place upon a stage, which would of course mean that all of the vistas in front of the people are flat and fake. They are essentially illusions, and you cannot see the backstage area of pulleys and cogs and things that lay behind them. And so that's really what the Thoth card here tries to actually explain in a little bit more detail. And Tree of Life wise, we're going to be in Malkuth. We're a number 10 card, and yet if we want to go a little bit further into that, it's going to be Malkuth in the world of Briar. So this is one of the 4 worlds, and it sits between that of emanation and that of formation, and it's the world known as the world of creation. And so to have Malkuth in the world of creation, it's quite simple. We're talking very much about the physical manifested universe, and indeed when we start to have a look at this card, we can see the Tree of Life, which in its totality represents everything in existence, is actually formed by all of the cups upon this card. Astrologically, this card is Mars in Pisces, and so we can see something not quite as wonderful as what we may first imagine here straight away, because Mars is quite warlike, it's quite masculine and disruptive, and Pisces is the opposite to that. It's going to be more flowing in peace and creativity and joyfulness without the conflict. And so to bring them together isn't very stable, essentially. And so even if we have another look at the cups after knowing this information, they don't look stable themselves. They're sort of tilted to one side, and they're actually forming, of course, the shape of the Tree of Life, and yet they're not stacked in a way that would be stable. Crowley actually wanted this card to look rather sinister. It's got that deep red and orange, that fiery element almost, which of course tells us that there's a very strong influence of Mars coming through on this card. And in fact, when we have a little look at some of the other symbols, this Mars shows up much more than what anything else does in this card. And so this satiety, this fullness, you might think, of course, that it's good if we've eaten a large meal and we're full, or that we've got everything that we want. That's a state of tranquility, a state of peace. It's something that a lot of people actually yearn for in their life. I want to have everything that I've ever wanted. And there's nothing wrong with that, of course. Let's not tip the scales the other way and go back into that whole world of illusion. The idea with this is sometimes something can only expand so much until it has to go somewhere else. The energy can't move anymore, and energy always moves. Everything in the whole universe always moves. Like, we've used this on the cards before, but even a dead body in a coffin is moving, because if it wasn't, how would it turn to dust? Nothing is ever still. And so when energy can't expand anymore, it has to start coming back in for its own sake. It's got nowhere else to go, and so it may collapse back into itself or fall down, and that's what we will see on this card. It's also very similar, even in contemporary science, to this idea of something such as a red shift, where it's suggested that the universe may be expanding, and yet if it can't expand anymore, could it collapse back in on itself into a singularity and begin again? And the endless cycle of death and rebirth that would come from it. The top cup is, of course, fed by Kether, by the light of divine love and wonder, and it spills forth into this duality here. And yet, an easily missed symbol is that there are 5 streams coming from this top cup to fill the others. The 5th Sephiroth on the Tree of Life is Geberar, and that is ruled by Mars. And the number 5 in tarot is also the number where we start getting conflicts and things showing up in the cards. And so this little symbol here crushes that illusion of a perfect world straight away and suggests that there is a conflict on the horizon, and that all the water comes off to the bottom of the card. It looks like it's just disappearing after it's overflown. And this is because when that energy can't expand anymore and it comes back in to itself, or it falls down, it flows down into the next cards, the next suit of cards, which is going to be swords. And so of course there is going to be that conflict showing up in the suit of swords. There's going to be separation. And so it's saying the process, it can't really end. It would just be expanding, contracting, expanding, contracting forever, unless the viewer of this problem, the person of whom has drawn the card, works out what's going on to stop this cycle. So essentially it's to work on yourself in order to get yourself out of a vicious cycle of which you think possibly could be satiated by the gathering of everything that you've wanted. We can see Mars everywhere in this, not just in those 5 streams, but the cups themselves, they're actually shaped like Aries, and of course that's going to be Mars. And of course you can also see the red flowers, of which in the background form the symbol of the Tree of Life. The top ones here, of which are the supernal triangle, that really deep red, that's going to be Mars as well, of course, there. And so it's saying that this strong energy of Mars is perhaps needed in this card to push us on towards the suit of swords, because otherwise we're just going to keep going round and round and round. And because the cups aren't stable, they're not in a place of complete harmony, they're tilted all different ways. You're never going to really have a firm foundation if you stayed within this actual world. Crowley really describes this rather perfectly in the Book of Thoth. He says, it's having discovered that and gotten everything that one wanted. One didn't want it after all, and now one must pay. And so what he's really saying there is you can surround yourself in this life of luxury. I'll buy that and we'll have this, and it's not a bad thing, like we've said, because you do want to have these things because they can make life more wonderful. And yet to buy things and to surround ourselves with these things because we just want to have everything, and we think that buying one more whatever it is could bring us happiness, could show us the right way, you end up just going round and round in circles, and really there's no other way to do this apart from to descend like the water, go with it, flow down into the suit of swords. And you know that in the suit of swords you're going to have to look at yourself and figure out a different way to get through these things to stop this cycling going on forever without any true expansion over a certain point. And so to draw the card, I mean, it can be good. It can show that you've got happiness, that there is going to be some type of joy in one's life, and yet because the card was meant to be rather sinister or have that kind of sinister underbelly to it, it's asking us to ask ourselves, is that a fleeting type of happiness? Is it short-lived? Or does it have an ability to fulfill us in a deeper meaning, in a more fuller way? Perhaps an interesting modern way of looking at this is to look at e-waste. And so it's all these computers and phones and things of which meant everything to you when you unwrapped it on Christmas morning, and it was the best thing you'd ever had. And then years later it's thrown away and it ends up on this pile of e-waste. It can no longer connect to the server and update, and so it doesn't work. It's not got a purpose. And yet there's no reason why it wouldn't have a purpose. You just wanted the latest and greatest, and it means everything for its short moment in the sun before it too has to come down and realise that it didn't bring us the lasting fulfilment that we were searching for. And so we have to look elsewhere to find that, because otherwise we will be unable to actually move from this card and onwards with the journey throughout the tarot.